Hey y'all. So once again, I had one idea in mind, and our Father said otherwise. And this is one that I actually wanted to do, but I stumbled upon something that kind of was interesting to me. So this is obviously part 5 of Unplug and Recharge. And one point that I did write down, and I don't know if it was before the Lord took over or if it was meant to be a part of this message, and it really coincides with the whole thing coincides, like it correlates, goes together. And there's not a lot of Bible. There's going to be some Bible at the end, but there's not really a lot of Bible pertaining to what I'm saying. And I do believe that we're living in unprecedented times, even though the Bible is very timeless. Anyway, children are not wired for the amount of stimulation that comes from the screens and a lot of the things that are available to them. And I don't know if any of you remember, but I do remember they were doing like a lot of studies, and there were a lot of things that Cocomelon was being I gotta be careful with this name dropping, but Cocomelon was being accused of and I wrote them down, of causing autism, speech delays, ADHD, subliminal messages, and even hypnotizing kids, right? The too many frequent screen changes, bright colors, the loudness in the background, and again, like the subliminal message and the hypnotizing. And then another point that I wrote down was even for adults, it does cause, social media does cause a high. Watching videos does cause a high, you know what I mean? Resulting in an addiction. I remember years ago, before I was even really because I've always been behind. I still don't have an iPhone. I was going through my daughter's phone though, and I might be crossing over soon. Anyway, she has I want to say the 11. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was like, anyway. Even for adults, it causes a high, resulting in an addiction. This is not separate from drugs or alcohol. Like, it's still physical. You're watching it with your eyes, you're listening to it with your ears, right? It's also harmful, so this is not like, oh, you're looking at your cousin who smoked crack or your uncle who's a drunk, but you're no different if you're addicted to your phone, right? Amen. So and it's mind altering in many ways. And then and this is where it gets interesting. I don't know if you remember, but I remember there's something. Hang on one second. So I don't know if you guys remember, but years ago, in 2020, Netflix released a documentary called A Social Dilemma. And I'm going to go through my notes. I don't want to jump ahead of myself. I have forgotten all about it, but I do remember, like, once I started looking into doing my research for this video, that came up, and I was like, wow. I remember being very adamant about watching it. And there's a lot of interesting things in it. Social dilemma. So this is the actual description. Like, when you Google A Social Dilemma, the documentary, this is the description. Tech experts from Silicon Valley sound the alarm on the dangerous impacts of social networking, which big tech, which I'm guessing is like similar to big pharma, which big tech used to manipulate and influence. And ironically, this came out in 2020, right? Some of the points that they made is how it algorithmically enables forms of behavior modification, psychological manipulation, technological addiction, fake news were the main points of the documentary. The algorithms encouraged addiction to their platforms. These were former employees. I don't know if y'all remember, these were former employees of Google, Facebook, Instagram. Like, the people who were talking in the documentary were they used to work for these companies. And there was even, I remember at one point seeing like a clip of a video from a girl that was from Google, where she was addressing where people were suspicious that people were listening to them on their phones. Look, mine is right here. Y'all have no clue. Like, I don't play with these phones. Anyway, but the girl was saying, like, you know how you guys think we're listening to you because you see an ad about something that you were talking to, and then she was like, we are listening to you. Anyway, another thing that social media that the documentary was telling us that social media does is increase societal polarization, intolerance, hatred, and even deadly violence. So polarization, obviously you think of polar like high contrast, right? So polarization is division into two sharply contrasting groups or sets of opinions or beliefs. So some of the bigger ones that we had was there were people saying Black Lives Matter, and then they were combated with, or they were met with, or rebutted by White Lives Matter, and then even both of those were met with All Lives Matter, right? And everybody was so passionate about it, right? You have your pro-choice people and your pro-life people, and everybody was also passionate about it. If you guys like really pay attention, like this stuff is dangerous, and I think that we are in like a time where if you don't pull out now, you may not be able to. And I know that there's some people who think you may not be able to. And God can't do anything. This is not to say that. This is to say that it will be more difficult. Maybe that's a better choice of words. If you don't pull out now. I don't know what it is about these times that we're in right now. But yeah. So there's that. And then I've been talking about the pandemic for years because it was a spirit. And then now the news is coming out that that there was never, like, none of that was real. But I've been saying for years, telling people that I could pull up receipts. I'm not interested in doing all that. If you know me in real life, I'm not I'm not gonna go ask nobody. No. I'm not into really pulling up the receipts like that. But I have been saying the pandemic was a spirit. And a lot of people during the same year, like during the year 2020, maybe 2021, they started calling it a plandemic. Like a lot of people were catching on to the conspiracy, right? But if you remember after the pandemic, when they said when they lifted the mask mandate, they stopped the social distancing and stuff, people were still staying indoors without the dangers of a supposed pandemic, without the dangers of a supposed disease. People were still staying indoors. People were still uncertain about things, just like we were during the pandemic, of how things were going to turn out, how things were going to go, and still a little fearful. And even now we see that same type of spirit, so to speak. Like, people aren't socializing in person anymore. We're doing on the phones and Zoom meetings and group chats and things like that, and not really getting together like we used to, right? And this is a personal opinion, that the pandemic was to usher in a new world order. And if those of you who understand like things like karmic laws and things, they have to warn us. That documentary was a warning. The pandemic was to usher in new world order. And they're saying, if you could go back and watch that documentary or even look into it, they're saying, mind you, we're talking about new world order, right? It comes out right in my head. Algorithmically enables forms of behavior modification, psychological manipulation, and technological addiction. So that's deep. That's control. That is new world order. Man. And then I was saying, like, yeah, the karmic laws, they have to tell us, whether it's subliminally, openly, jokingly, either way you look at it, they have to tell us. And I didn't write on here, and this is one that I really wanted to gear towards teenagers, is the depression, anxiety, anger, and addiction part. For our girls, we have a lot of looking at other girls and admiring things about them in a way that causes them to look at themselves as if they're not pretty enough. There's a lot of body dysmorphia, and I don't mean to put it in quotations like gaslighting. I just think that if we took away the power these phones have over our kids, it can reduce a lot of that for them, whether they know it or not. They're not gonna be happy with it. It's not. I mean, they're not. You know what I mean? But young girls comparing themselves to other girls online, and not even just how they look, like the things that they have available to them and things like that, and then they're looking at their own personal life, wishing that they had those things, which can cause depression. We have a lot of young men who have a lot going for them, whether that's athletically, whether they're intelligent, whatever the case may be, where these young men can be entrepreneurs, these young men can be the LeBron James of their generation, these young men can be all types of things, but instead they want to be gamers online. And it's not it's not funny. It's only funny when you think about the grown men who want to do it, right? And I'm not judging nobody. I'm not judging nobody. I'm just saying, unplug a little bit and tap in with God and see what he says. See what God has to say for you personally. A lot of what I'm saying here is my personal observations, things that I've looked up, like even my Bible verses I Google. But I promise you, many times I've been in prayer and I'll just hear a Bible verse and go to it and be tripping out on what the Bible verse is. So, no judgment, no judgment, no judgment. I'm just saying, we have young men who can be entrepreneurs, who can be athletes, who can be the lawyers and the doctors and the dentists and the all of these other mechanics, all types of stuff to in our village, right? But instead they would and a lot of guys become addicted to video games. Some men don't want to admit it, but it's addictive. It's stimulating. It's too stimulating, and we aren't wired for that. We're not wired to be able to handle that. God didn't create us like that. That is why I don't know if you can even think back maybe 10 years ago. What's this, 24? So in like 2004, you didn't see a lot of people running around saying they were depressed. You didn't see a lot of people running around saying they had anxiety. You didn't see people running around being perfectly fine with being divided from their family, being separated from their friends, with being by themselves, being a lone wolf. Like, you didn't see as many people as you do now who are claiming, and I'm not saying that you don't, because the proof is in the pudding, that the social media and the things can actually literally cause this. You know what I mean? ADHD, all of that. It can literally cause it. But if you look back, things were not this way prior to a lot of stuff. And I praise God. I used to be upset. I used to look at like older times, and I even like reminisce from when I was younger. Like, I've always been very observant. I've always been very analytical. My grandmother used to say, out of my mom, my dad, my older siblings, out of everybody, I was the smartest. My grandmother was a minister and a woman of God, and she saw something in me that I didn't even know I had at that time. Anyway, if you look back at the previous times, you did not see as many people, and people weren't as harsh with one another. What did they say? Where is it? Intolerance, hatred, and even deadly violence. People used to, if you didn't, like, there would be like maybe a drag queen that lived in the neighborhood. Nobody bothered him. That was him. That was his business, or her business, or however you would like to say it. It didn't get people in an uproar. Nowadays, people are in danger for things like that from human beings. Not like, oh, the rapture this and the end times that. Real life people will become enraged that someone else is living a gay lifestyle or a lesbian lifestyle. People will come enraged if, like, all types of things that have nothing to do with them whatsoever. It's bananas. If you unplug and spend some time with the Almighty, you can recharge your brain, you can recharge your heart, you can recharge yourself. So I do have some Bible for you. I'm gonna say them. I wanted to read them. If the Lord leads me, I will. Hang on one second. As per usual, I do recommend interacting with this word. I do recommend writing down the Bible verses, reading them for yourself, reading more than what I'm giving you, so that you can have some context and some truth and some idea about why it was being said, what was happening at the time that it was being said, what was it being said about, things like that. I'm really, really big on that. Don't never just take anybody, not even mine, not your mom and them, don't take nobody. I tell my kids all the time, don't take my word for nothing. You know, don't just take somebody. Do your own research, do your own looking into your own things. And this is not like, oh, y'all not doing your, it's not that. It's, first of all, you're not going to get me in trouble with my Father in heaven. And second of all, it's just important, you know, and I don't want to be not necessarily responsible, but I don't want to be the face of someone who was led astray. Like, she said this, and then based on what she said, I went and made this decision, and things like that. So for anxiety, we have Philippians 4:6-7, which is be ye anxious for nothing, but in all things in prayer and supplication, right? Philippians 4:6-7. 1 Peter 5:7, which is cast your cares upon the Lord. We have John 14:27, which is when Jesus was leaving peace with us. Mind you, this is about people who are feeling anxious. 2 Timothy 1:7, which is God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of love, peace, and sound mind. A lot of people will explain to you anxiety is really just a lot of fear of things that may not happen, or probably, like, more than likely won't happen, but you're afraid of it, right? So that's 2 Timothy 1:7. Psalm 55:22 again tells you to cast your cares upon the Lord. So, and for as far as anger, we have Ephesians 4:26, which I believe is be angry and sin not. Don't let the sun go down upon your anger. I notice a lot of people, once they get mad, they want to stay mad, which is weird to me. Like, I just, like, I do not like getting upset. I do not like getting upset. Proverbs 14:29, Psalm 37:8, Proverbs 15:1, Proverbs 29:11. And then for depression, we have Isaiah 41:10, Psalm 9:9, Psalm 34:18, Psalm 3:3. For addiction, I found some really, really, really good scriptures. Like, even if you don't think you have an addiction, I would recommend, like, literally all of these. And this one I also noticed, and if you'll notice in some of these other ones, like, you have Psalm 9:9, Psalm 3:3. Like, there's a lot of frequent, like, sequence. Proverbs 29:11, and then a lot of us know Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, right? So for addiction, we have 1 Corinthians 10:13, 1 Peter 5:8, which is right after 5:7. Oh, 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober and be sober minded, because our adversary, the devil, roams about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Right? James 1:12 through 15. That one was really good. Again, that's James 1:12 through 15. 1 John 2:16. 1 Corinthians 6:12. There it is again. 1 John, and then 2:16. 1 Corinthians 6:12. Like, it's the same numbers. This is very interesting to me. I'm into stuff like that. James 4:7. Galatians 5:19 through 21. And then here's another one, 1 Peter 2:11. And then there's also Titus 2:11 through 12. Proverbs 20:1. John 8:36. There was another one I said that just had that 36. 2 Peter 2:19. And then 2 Peter 3:12. So I hope this was good for y'all. If you have access to it, I don't even know if it's still on Netflix. But it was called The Social Dilemma, and they were essentially warning us about the dangers of social media, despite what their agenda was. Those of you who paid attention to it like I did, like, you understand how deep it is. So this is not like just my personal opinion or anything like that. The Unplug and Recharge, originally I wanted to share because in my experience of going off of social media and things, I noticed I was more I felt closer to God. I was felt closer to my kids, and I was more attentive to them. Excuse me. And I wasn't what did I say? I used to tell people, yeah, I had to deactivate my page because every time I get on here I start feeling sassy. And I don't know why I use that word, but if you notice, a lot of those posts are like real sassy, like, whoa, they're there now. So originally that was my idea, was to kind of share my experience, like to let people know, if you put that phone down and just pay attention to the world around you and the God who is close to you. And then God just took over, and we are now on part 5. I'm not sure how long he's going to keep this going. I am sure that I'm going to continue to be obedient in doing what our Father tells me to do. I love y'all so much. I think I'm about to take a nap. I done sat up here and got sleepy. But y'all have a wonderful day in Jesus' name.